I think we have to bear in mind that the real call is to be pioneering all the time. It's not about the age of pioneers, a bunch of people who have come, who have done their job and who have disappeared. It really is a call to say, this is a frame of mind. It is a way of thinking. It is a willingness to think new stuff and to have the courage of your convictions to push on. In the early years of Singapore, particularly, I think you have to recall, in 1959, Singapore became internally self-governing. Even at that point, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew and Dr. Goh Keng Swee, I would say the two primary actors among all the pioneers, the political pioneers in the leadership of Singapore, they had come to the conclusion themselves that it's not viable for Singapore to be independent on its own, that we didn't have an economic hinterland, and that Singapore has to seek to merge with Malaya to go back to its geographical and historical roots. From 1959 right through to the time of merger, Singapore saw it as being able to gain an economic hinterland. The whole idea at that time was whether we could contemplate the merger into one entity as a situation like you have Washington, D.C. as the political center of the US and New York City as the commercial center, whether you can envisage Kuala Lumpur as the political center of the merged entity and Singapore as a commercial center. So the whole thinking was developing Singapore's economy on this positioning of Singapore as a commercial center. But when independence came in 1965, it was unanticipated, it was sudden, it was unplanned for. In a way, it was unwelcome, but in other ways, it was welcome. It was at that point that you began to see the whole world as the hinterland. It is a source of capital, it is a source of technology, it is the markets. So if we talk about that pioneering generation, it was having to rethink the whole paradigm. How do you create hope for the future? So even for many of the Singaporeans, they may not have the full economic opportunity for their future, but education was the big thing. That if you provided greater and greater opportunities for their children to rise up, get to the highest level of education that is possible, that represented hope for the future. The agenda for a government that had to provide for the country when it suddenly became independent could be clearly defined in these critical dimensions of jobs and homes and education. Yes, it was out of a box, but the reason why it became out of the box was a clarity as to what it is that you need to achieve. So that clarity gives you a clear focus. And when people say it is out of the box, and people say talking of bold and innovative policies, quite frankly, for the people who have to deal with it, once you are clear about where you need to get to, it doesn't sound like bold. It sounds a lot like being responsible. That is your duty. That is what you had to do, create jobs. So it didn't sound too much like being so bold and courageous. You are not being heroic. You are just delivering on your responsibility. Industrialization meant you have to prepare the land for it, which is how Jurong was developed as our first massive industrial estate. It was about getting foreign investments to Singapore, and to get foreign investments to Singapore, you need to build on trust that we are going to be able to maintain peace and security. There's going to be political stability. So you need to build the manufacturing and service capacity in Singapore to fit into the global supply chain. Nobody will buy the story of import substitution. They are here because maybe it represented a way to enter into Asia, a way to enter into the region. And this is why Singapore needs to function as a hub, even in the idea of industrialization. home ownership has a different implication, because when you rent out an apartment, people are going to do the minimum. They pay the rental, but they're not going to pay attention to the environment. They're not going to pay attention to the neighborhood. The HDB flats, which people are willing to buy, that's their money that's going in. So I'm saying that we went on a path which was quite innovative, which is quite different from conventional. Even there, you're on a pioneering path. Now we are delivering a different thing, we are delivering a capacity to deal with the future. This business of building capacity is not only because the state of the economy is different, it's because the frame of mind of people are different. Their hopes and aspirations are different. And now we're having Singaporeans who are much better educated, who can dream their own dreams. You get a huge variety of hopes and expectations, which will be impossible for the government to deliver. What is of value to Singaporeans is still the same, but the content now becomes different, because it is not the brick and mortar you're trying to produce. It is now about the spirit of the individual. It's not just your personal dream. What is your collective dream of the people in your country? You'll be surprised that people can give you an answer to that. It's something from deep within their hearts and their minds. They'll tell you what they hope their country to be 20 to 30 years. But the reality is nobody can tell you what the world is going to be 20 years from now. So let's imagine, and you'll be surprised at the results.